At Bedrosian, we aim to align the goals of academics and practitioners, to make clear what good government looks like, to work to foster effective governance and spread good ideas, and ultimately, to work to make sure that government implements good policy.
Very importantly, what we're seeing here with the emergence of development agreements is a shift from the public land use process towards bilateral contract negotiation. These projects that they concern are often very large scale, some mega projects, such as my Los Angeles case study, where multi-billions of dollars are at stake. And while some are public projects, others are private projects with large public subsidies. So the idea of how public money is spent here becomes very interesting. Low-income urban communities have faced concentrated harm from decades of investment and disinvestment, including past planning failures during urban renewal. And so this is an explicit strategy to try to make sure that equitable development happens. So for project owners, the goal here is really to reduce their risk and facilitate development. For labor unions, to hire their members, but also to raise the quality of jobs. For local government, to direct benefits to constituents, but also to facilitate the development process in general. The problem here is the tension between the paper benefits delivered when an agreement gets passed and the material benefits that the community depends upon for any lasting change. They know, even as the agreement gets signed, that that doesn't necessarily mean anyone in their community is going to get a job. So to get into my research, 2 case studies on project labor agreements, the LA County Metro Project Labor Agreement here in Los Angeles, and then the Yesler Terrace Community Workforce Agreement in Seattle. The Metro Agreement so far has been a success, but with the Yesler Terrace Agreement, that this is not a success, right? And that this agreement is actually very contested. Traditionally, these jobs have not been available to different groups, right? In particular, there's a persistent exclusion of African American workers and women from construction jobs. Yesler Terrace residents push back against this, and they say that Yesler Terrace, the first racially integrated housing community in the nation, it was a community that works, and this is just a facade for gentrification because the land is so valuable. The Seattle Housing Authority really sought to demonstrate in a public way that they were doing a better job of community inclusion. What we see here is a lot of tension and a lot of passing blame. This became very apparent when I asked both the Seattle Housing Authority and the unions whether or not they would extend this agreement. The Seattle Housing Authority said, absolutely, we're figuring out how to do this. It's so awesome. We're doing good work here, right? The unions said, we cannot wait for this agreement to expire. It's really evident that no one's watching this process, and that Yesler Terrace residents, the agreement beneficiaries, were never really involved, and they're not really involved in implementation. Implementation has really fallen to the unions because they're the ones with a vested interest in demonstrating community accountability. And part of it is because of this implementation structure in which they're in theory working together, but that there's not a lot of accountability here, right? And this is how hiring outcomes are determined through unions referring workers, contractors, and the Seattle Housing Authority, but that they aren't that vested in the agreement actually producing all of the outcomes promised to community stakeholders. It turns out that it's actually very difficult to economically target work because it requires unions to alter the way in which they track workers. Unions have hired Section 3 workers, but this doesn't necessarily mean that they're Yesler Terrace residents or public housing residents. If implementation is structured carefully so as to give everyone a vested interest in community outcomes materializing during implementation, that it appears that that can be significant leverage to induce everyone to fight to produce these outcomes.
Implementing good policy. That's the way we move forward together and prosper. We're all in this together.